I'll share mine real quick. I knew, I think since seventh grade though, because I was, big on math and science, I was determined to be an engineer. And when I actually went to college right after school, right after high school, I went to the University of Michigan and was in the School of Engineering, and I majored in industrial operations engineering. But life, things happened. I didn't finish there and I went back later in life. But that's what I was supposed to do. And sometimes I kick myself in the butt about that. Like, God, if I had that engineering degree from U of M. But life had another path for me.
Some would argue you technically are in the engineering field with what you do.
There you go. And Betty, that's a big no. There was no Ohio State in my future.
I was going to say that was a low blow, Betty.
Well, yeah, maybe that's why I don't know.
If anything, I probably should have went to Notre Dame because I was a Notre Dame fan. So that's my college football.
Okay. That's more acceptable.
Okay. Whatever works for Betty, okay. Okay, well, we're at 4:08. We're a little past starting time. So Jelana, the floor is all yours.
Okay, well, good afternoon and welcome everyone. I'm Jelana Canfield, owner of Jelana's Bake Shop and vice chair of the Washington County Black Advisory Business Council. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you have had an opportunity to see some of the ways the Chamber has been celebrating Women's History Month through our social media channel and Women's Conference, one of the Chamber's signature events. It was amazing. This conversation today is part of this celebration, and we are delighted to have three great Black professionals here with us today participating in Heritage Moments panel discussion. We do have time reserved at the end of the discussion for our attendees to ask questions to our panel. I would ask each of you to remain on mute until you're asking your question. So let's get started. First, we want to have an opportunity to get to know our panel members. Natacha, would you like to go first?
Of course.
Well, thank you.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for being here. My name is Natacha Dorsaint, and I own a construction company. I am licensed in Hillsboro, Oregon area. So yeah, that's me. Do you want me to introduce myself? What do you?
Well, a little bit about your business, how you got started, especially in a very male-dominant industry.
Okay. So I apologize. I'm not a big speaker, as you guys can tell. I get nervous and I forget everything that I'm supposed to say. But let's do this. I moved here in 2014, and then I got a divorce in 2018. My background was in the medical field for 12 years. And it wasn't such a demanding field. I have children, never have time really to spend with my kids because I'm always working. The weekend, I'm always, never home. So after my divorce, I was looking to do something to kind of like, that I love and to also kind of like help me to be able to spend more time with my children and also enjoyed it. I knew somebody that was in the field for 17 years, taught me a lot about it, and I've done some research and fall in love with it. I wanted to be a real estate agent. So as I'm going through the program studying, I kept falling in love with more on the building side of it, the structure side of it. So I merged that way, do my research in the construction side of it. So I get my educational background that I needed to get my license and started my business in 2019. And I have been learning ever since. And I have been doing it ever since. So that's how I got started. I wasn't too excited.
How is the early stages in a male dominant industry?
It was tough and it's still tough. What makes it better every day that I go to work to be able to do what I do is really stand up for myself. Know that this is what I want to do. This is where I want to be. This is my passion. And if something is said, something bothers me, address it right in and there, it doesn't have to be confrontational, but, don't let people walk over me basically. And get educated, get the knowledge that you need, because, that's also a backup, because people can talk, they can say things, but if you have that knowledge, you get that education to back everything that you do, it helps you in that field.
Well, thank you. I'm so impressed. You're literally building doors while building doors.
Breaking them too.
Yes. Well, thank you. Okay, so Jenn, you're up next. Jenn, how did you initially get involved with Genentech? How'd you get your start?
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Jenn Klotz, and I am the Community Relations External Communications Lead for Genentech in Oregon. And I've been at the company for about 13 years. And I was actually, I'm a native. I was born and raised in Portland. I left to California for college and promptly came back because this is where I wanted to be, and my family's here. So I was working at OHSU, and I was working in workforce development and community relations. And I thought, this is the job of my dreams. This is exactly what I want to do, is help people, right? That was just something that felt like it aligned with my values. And so I was like, there's never going to be a job that I love as much as this job. I'm going to stay here forever. And there's a pension, right? All good things. And then OHSU, since I work for somebody else and not myself, decided to do a transformation, which meant about 13 people in our department were no longer had jobs. And the roles that I wanted did not currently exist. So I found myself as a single mom looking for a job, knowing that I'd have 3 months to find something. And prior to that, I was a recruiter. So I knew how to just put the word out. I just talked to everybody in my network and just said, hey, I'm going to be looking for a job. Here's the things that I can do. And at the time, I was a singer in a band, and the guitar player in my band, who's from California, and he said, hey, I know you're looking for a job. I have a friend who just moved up here from the Bay Area because his company is opening a whole new division in Hillsborough. He didn't remember the name of it. He didn't know what they did, but he said, he's going to come to our gig at the wine bar on Friday. You should meet him. Great. An actual interview, singing for a job. And so one thing led to another. I met him. He was an amazing person who happened to be a lead manager who had moved up here from another Genentech facility. And our connection was just very clear. He said, you are a Genentech person, and gave me his card. And I just beat the gene.com jobs website for, 3 weeks. And finally, this chief of staff role came open that was a perfect fit for me. My degree and experiences in business management, communications, and operations. So I knew when I walked out of my first interview that I was meant to work for Genentech, and nobody knew who Genentech was when we first got here. I was like employee number 55, 60. So the big part of my job was building our reputation in the community. So it was connecting with elected officials. It was connecting with higher institutions to help develop a workforce, a pipeline. It was, getting grassroots efforts and creating strategies to help support nonprofits where our employees live and work and play. And it's grown and grown. And in that time, Genentech went from 1 facility to 3 facilities plus field folks. So we have almost 1,000 people in Oregon now. And so I have the opportunity to bridge all those sites to the community.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Cobi, your turn. A little bit about yourself and your role at MESO.
Sure. So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Cobi Lewis. I'm the CEO and Executive Director of MESO. It's Micro Enterprise Services of Oregon. And We are a certified CDFI, Community Development Financial Institution, often referred to as a microlender. And we provide business and technical advising services for primarily minority-owned businesses and small business owners that are majority 80% or below of MFI. So we're working with what we consider small and micro businesses to start, but we also have a number of clients who are on their third brick and mortar, or clients who are selling their products overseas. So it's a range that we help. Our home base is here in Portland, but we have 6 offices in and around the metro area and are opening up another office in Southern Oregon as we speak. And I've been here at Miso for just almost a year. Previous to that, spent the last 10 years in banking, Umpqua Bank and at Wells Fargo, primarily in their CRA and community development and corporate responsibility divisions. And prior to that was in nonprofit. So I've come full circle like I wanted to, and to come back to this space of just really working with entrepreneurs. Really happy to be here. I was able to participate in another event that the Chamber put on, and that was fantastic. So thank you, Jelana, for the invitation. Looking forward to today's conversation.
Thank you, Cobi. Okay. First question for the panel. Women who work in a traditionally male field, what kind of struggles have you faced? We'll start with Natacha. So Natacha, what struggles have you faced in your very, very male-dominated field?
Not to scare everybody. I mean, women's out there. I mean, with construction, every day it's a struggle. At least speaking from my experience. I've struggled in this field because I'm a woman, I'm a mother, because people will make comments because I'm a mom, you know, I'm working in a male industry, even people that I never expected that from. It's a struggle because I'm 5 feet 2 inches. I heard comment like, why are you here? This is not a cheerleading squad. You know, you don't belong here. And the reason why I decided to share this with you guys, because I really, it's not like, I'll talk, but like these comments, I'll keep them to myself. I don't really like to share them, but I don't know, for some reason, I feel like I need to share them with you guys today. And I struggle because I'm a Black woman. And in this field, people they're loud. It's not like my background when I work in the medical field. If somebody has something to say, they'll look at you, they'll glare at you and smile. Construction, they'll tell you exactly what they're thinking. You know, nobody hides it, you know. If I'm working with a contractor that don't like me, they will tell me they don't like me, why they don't like me, you know, and they'll make it clear. And it's such a fine line because most people that I work with, they know each other for so long. And sometimes even if some person heard it, they know it's coming, they hear it, you know, they're not gonna call the person out in front of them because like it's a male thing, I guess, you know? So it really takes determination and a really thick skin to walk in every day or even a job site or sitting in a group with people, knowing that, thinking, you know, do I feel like I fit in? You know, what is it gonna be next? What are they gonna say next? I walk in meeting where male will ask me test quiz. because to become a general contractor, we have to sit for the state board to take the Oregon test to pass for license. I've been asked, I've worked in places where Mel will straight up walk up to me and ask me a test quiz. And it's not a joke. It's not like a joke. Like they really want to know, like, do you know this? And it's not like we're having a conversation or anything. It's just like, it's in a disrespectful way. Like, and you add everything. And on top of that, you take someone, like, I don't like to talk. I don't like to speak publicly. So you drop an accent in the middle of it, and then you try to explain yourself, you know, and I get criticized for that as well in my field. Going into this field, I thought my struggles was going to be from the homeowners, my customers. And the funny thing is that they love me. Like my customers, people don't care if you're a male or female doing the job. As long as you provide quality work, you have the knowledge, you know what you're doing, they're fine. Most of my struggles are in the industry itself, you know, so it's a struggle. I mean, it's a struggle. Every day it's a struggle. Again, like I said, what keeps me going is I learned how to find my voice and speak up. And that's what keep me going. That's what get me out of bed every day and do what I do and be motivated. It's like, I'm gonna walk in, I'm gonna do what I need to do. And if somebody says something, I will speak up. So yeah, that's my struggles.
Thank you, Natacha, for sharing such intense stories, but it really does make a difference for all of us to hear what you've gone through. And thank you for persevering, because we do need you out there doing great work and representing us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cobi, what have been some of your biggest professional challenges for being a Black woman, and how have you faced them?
Yeah, so I think what I would say my biggest professional challenge has been is often feeling fairly siloed and feeling like you're by yourself in the scenario. So I also, like Jen, who I think I know, I have to figure out why I know you, Jen, it's so cool. I grew up here in Portland, I'm born and raised here. So I'm not a stranger to being the only African-American in a crowd, in a classroom, in an establishment, in a company. So that's fairly standard. But the higher you go within your career and you start adding VP and SVP and senior SVP, CEO to your name, you are absolutely by yourself here, especially in Oregon. And for me, it's not necessarily about that I don't have peers. I don't have peers that look like me. And because just of just a general kind of the way that we are raised to protect ourselves, there's not always what I consider peers that I 100% feel like I can be my true self or be, share any vulnerability if I'm having any issue, any problem. I don't have that skill set, don't have that peer group. So I think as I'm working through and navigating through the different businesses where I've worked, and I've had a wonderful career, and I'm appreciative of that. Not saying I haven't had people I could talk to, just I've not had that same congenial like peer group. And oftentimes you do feel like you are by yourself, and you have to figure out solutions and to problems on your own, and you have to if something's going wrong, there's not someone I can call to go through that with that's maybe at the same company. So I think I know for a fact that is an issue that a lot of Black women face, especially here in Oregon. We do have each other, but not in the same company. Oftentimes there's only one of us. And we represent the sum and whole of every, not just Black female, but Black person that our peers or our other coworkers might know. So it's a real isolating and lonely experience to have, when you are in the workplace. So, and it follows you. I have been other places, however. One of the banks where I work has a headquarters down south, and I was there for the day, and I did not see a person that wasn't of color. I mean, the entire time, and I just was shocked. I was absolutely in shock. So their experience, we went through a kind of a peer leadership group together, their experiences were entirely different than mine. But, you know, it is something that we do face here in Oregon. Again, we're not unaccustomed to it, but it doesn't necessarily make it any easier.
Thank you for sharing. And thank you for sharing that sense of loneliness. Okay, Jenn, for you, your biggest professional challenges for being a Black woman and how you have faced it.
Yeah, I want to say first, Cobi, I think I know you too. I thought the same thing. I was like, I know her from somewhere. We have to figure that out. And also, what you said really resonates with me. Being born and raised here, you get sort of just used to that sense of, you know, I'm going to be the only person, you know, in the grocery store where I live that I'm going to see that looks like me, for example, or just variety of those things. And so for me, it's kind of a twofold thing. One is tokenism for certain. And not always with poor intent, right? Sometimes it's the team or the group who is behind and they realize that they really want to have more representation. So they tap the same kind of 3 people because that's the only 3 people they know. But then those people are the only in the room. And that has been me on many occasions all throughout my career. And then the other is this, please speak for everyone who marginally looks like you. So my opinion must be the opinion of all people of color. And that's a really difficult one for me. I very clearly state every time someone asks me a question about representing that my lived experience is not the same as the person next to me and the person next to them. So I can only reflect on mine. In fact, my lived experience in some ways is probably a lot more like mainstream people because I was adopted at birth and my family that raised me is white. And their first generation, my father's first generation from Germany. Like the culture I didn't connect to, I identified as Black, but did not connect to it until I left for college. Because I lived in Portland and because I lived in certain areas of Portland, I was the only Black kid at church. I was the only Black kid in school. I was the only Black kid. So I've been the only my whole life. So I've just been accustomed to just going in saying, it's likely gonna be that way. And when it's not, it's really exciting. And I make instant friends, but when it is at this stage in my career, I just accept it for what it is. And then I choose to focus my mentoring on young women of color specifically, because I didn't see anyone who looked like me in a director level role. And so I didn't know that it was even a place for me until I finally started, you know, just realizing it's going to be a place for me. That's where I'm going. So I think, what I didn't see represented for me, I had to create for myself, and I don't want that for the next generation. So that's sort of where I focus now. When I walk into a room, it's 9 white men, all, you know, lovely people, and me, I know very clearly that I need to make sure I'm seen and I'm heard in this space, and that I'm representing Jenn and not everybody who might look like her.
Oh, powerful points. Thank you so much. Our next questions for the panel. The last couple of years have been filled with uncertainty. What is the most valuable advice that you can give to women re-entering the workforce now in 2020? And let's start with you, Jenn. What's the most valuable advice you can give to women re-entering the workforce this year?
Well, I don't, you know, you guys will have to judge whether it's valuable or not. But I would say, personally, being very clear with yourself about your own worth and your own value. That's, I think, where you have to start. And then do not compromise and do not settle. So go after what you want, speak up for yourself, be your own biggest fan. I like to say to my sons who are in their 20s, be your own biggest fan. I mean, I will always be your biggest fan, but be your own biggest fan when you go out there in the world. Understand what you bring and what value you have. And then I would also say network, just get connected, attend things like this, raise your hand. People can't say yes if you don't ask. And I just think I wish I'd known that earlier in career for me, is to ask to be on projects, be on teams, to take on different things to help develop myself.
Thank
so
you.
I'm not sure what level of value that is, but that's the advice I would share.
It's very valuable. I'm working now and it inspired me. So Natacha, you're next. What advice do you give to other women entering the workforce this year after being maybe out during the pandemic or changing?
I think Jenn was reading my paper. Because everything you say, I completely agree with. I mean, this past 2 years has been crazy. The pandemic, kind of challenges us in so many ways. And now 2022 comes in. I think it's a time for any women out there that are trying to re-enter the workspace, need to take a deep breath and reevaluate themselves, kind of see what you did the past 2 years, where you were and where you want to be 2022 and where you see yourself going. Because women, we tend to be like caregiver or caretaker, and then we tend to put ourselves in the back burner and sort of like forget about us. We want to take care of our children, we want to take care of everybody else, I think this year should be a year where we try to be a little selfish, not too much, just a little, to kind of go after what we want, rather it's a business you want to start, rather it's school you want to go back to, whatever it is that you want to do, and it's add value to your word, to whatever your value was, it's something, it's not a loss, it's always gonna be a gain. And also thinking about the place that you're working now, or the job that you're about to get, are there value you there? Are you gonna be happy there? And if not, don't be afraid to walk out. I mean, I know we have responsibilities, but some of us are just crippled in the same place, because we're so scared, we're so afraid, but if only we know how strong we are. And again, with Jenn, I mean, find other women in the community. You'll be surprised. I mean, women will be surprised how many of us are out there are willing to help you, talk to you, and help you find, that dream, that goal, or connect you. I know my mission this year is to connect as many people as I can. So when I talk to women, they're like, I'm working to this, I'm working to that. I'm in the back of my head, I'm thinking, oh, maybe I should introduce them to that person, kind of help them, because we have to have each other's back. And it's not just talking to the women out there. I'm also talking to myself and us here. We have to have each other's back. We have to help each other, get to that finish line, work in that career. Because if there's one thing all women share, it's being a woman. I mean, for me, that's hard enough. I don't know about y'all. I mean, just, it's hard. So yeah, reevaluate yourself and don't settle, go for whatever it is you've been wanting to do. That's my, big and thick, whatever.
Thank you.
Piece of advice.
Yes, thank you. I do love the point you made. It is already tough just being a woman. That's one thing, no matter our backgrounds, ethnic or racial or sexual, just being a woman's tough enough.
Yeah.
And, yeah. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey. Cobi, can you answer the same? What advice do you give to women re-entering the workforce, or maybe changing careers after the pandemic in 2022?
Yes. So not to just repeat what everybody's been saying, I think one thing the pandemic has showed us is that flexibility in kind of the work environment and the traditional structure is something that's possible. And as we talked about being a woman, being a mother. I also have 2 children. They're both college age at this point, but I just remember how hard it was trying to be a fully present parent. And that goes for anybody, men or women, But doing that as a woman, it's interesting because even though it's touted being a mother is something great, when in the workplace, it's often looked at as a fault whenever you have to actually do something for your child, which we all do. We all have to take our kids to the doctors. We all want to be there for a game or, the camps that end at 3, right? And which I still don't understand why they do that to us. We finish work at 5, camp should end at 5. But regardless, we have to do different things to make our lives work and also be present. So if you're re-entering the workforce right now, there's a ton of opportunities to really craft your best work environment. I know at our organization, we were told by our attorneys that we needed to add a couple questions in there around what is your preferred work environment, because now employees can demand, it's an employee's market. They can demand that we do, shared work environment or flexible work environment or half home, half virtual, whatever that might be. And if that's what works for you, you need to look for a position that works for you. I mean, it's hard enough right now. The workplace is just difficult enough. But there's a lot of opportunities out there right now. I would say, I don't remember who said this, but really call on your resources, call on your networks, find something you're passionate about and find something that works for you. Because again, even though I am an employer and I don't always love it, it is an employee's market. There is flexibility to be found. And there's work to be found that maybe you would prefer or enjoy. You don't have to these days do a job that you hate anymore. I mean, there's so many options that I could say pull on your networks, call on your networks to find something that works for you. But it's just this is a different environment. This is different than it was 2 years ago. It's different than it was last year. And again, I feel like I'm kind of half and half because I'm saying these things while also being frustrated by them at the same time, trying to hire at the organization. But it's the truth. And I think this is a good spot for women right now. People have no idea how many conference calls I took from a football field or from a track field or from my car waiting to pick up a child or from a doctor's office or whatever it might have been. I've been lucky in my career to have opportunities to be a bit more flexible, but I think that's the advice I would give, is just to really find the opportunity that works for you, that allows you to shine, but also be your best self at home.
Thank you. Thank you. In fact, the next question, which is something you actually brought up in not only the women's conference, but in a previous discussion about the struggles of women, especially for Black women. The last few years, we've been shining a light on microaggressions in the workplace. And as a Black woman, what are the types of microaggressions have you had to experience? And how did you deal with or react to these microaggressions? Cobi, can you first explain to our audience today what microaggression really is and how to recognize when it's actually happening to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So microaggressions as they stand, it's a noun, it is a thing. It's a statement, it's an action, it's an incident that is indirect or subtle or unintentional sometimes, but it's discriminatory against whomever that member is of that marginalized group. So it's not always the blatant racism, it's not always the blatant marginalization, but it are those subtle things that over time build up and are very noticeable, usually to members of that marginalized group. Oftentimes, as Black females in particular, and growing up in a very homogenous environment like Oregon, we are trained and we're taught very early on that showing your humanity will jeopardize your career. You are supposed to come up and you have to be superwoman. You have to compartmentalize your emotions. You can't let them see who you really are, because if they knew who you really were as a person of color, then you wouldn't be this model minority that they think you are. Working while Black here in Oregon, despite any situation you're in, you will always encounter microaggressions. It just is what it is. They can be blatant, they can be casual, but it's to a point here for some of us that they happen so often that it almost appears as if we accept them, but just be assured that's not the case. We just oftentimes don't know how to handle it because we need our job. We can have a strong work ethic. We can be prepared to work twice as hard But we do have to, in every single instance, maintain our dignity and self-respect to still have the same face, whatever organization we're working with. So I, kind of pondered then about, this question around microaggressions, and I'm just going to list a handful that are really applicable to this environment. And some of them people might have experienced and some might not, but I'm hoping, during this question and with this, that I can not just shine light on it, but, just bring it to the forefront that these are things that we deal with every single day. And people have already, some of these people have brought up, being the representative, being expected to speak up and represent every person of color with whatever group you serve, being the one chosen to be in every committee. So anytime there's anything having to do with diversity, everybody looks to you to participate. We don't need to participate. And that's the part that, it's hard for us to push back. We appreciate that you acknowledge that this is an opportunity for us to be in a peer group, but oftentimes a diversity conversation doesn't need to include the person that's diverse. It needs to include those who are unfamiliar. So oftentimes when you pick and you choose the person of color to participate in these things, to us, that's not always considered a compliment. Oftentimes that can be a bit intimidating because we don't feel like we can say no to those activities. My personal favorite, and this is something I've dealt with, and oftentimes people do, being called intimidating, being called hostile, being called aggressive, being called difficult, being called angry, the syndrome of like the angry Black woman or the angry Black man, when we show any semblance of, essentially our power, any bit of just what we would consider basic leadership or being direct. Oftentimes that's seen as a threat. And you'd be really surprised how often people say that to us to our face in a meeting, in an environment, in front of other people, that they're intimidated. And that one is oftentimes really hard to get around as well, because any response to that on the defense can also be seen as intimidating. Another thing, like I'd say, we talked about, I kind of mentioned the model minority. There's oftentimes where we will either try to overperform so that we can show that we are the model minority. And, we can be really early, we can be on time, we can do things, 110%, 20% past what's expected. And oftentimes we're villainized for doing too much. And then the minute we do just enough or too less, you're also villainized for that. So it's really hard to try to struggle and find the balance as a minority, especially here, because all eyes are on you at all different times. And so it can be really difficult as well. And then what I mentioned too before is being isolated, misunderstood, misrecognized, misrepresented. And, it's interesting how we can be hyper invisible, but also hyper visible at the same time. So, it's just something that we deal with every single day. Oftentimes people will reference or, microaggression might happen. A lot of times people don't realize that's what it is. And it's realize that if you are working around minorities, working around a minority woman, whoever it might be, sometimes it's really difficult for us to feel comfortable enough to bring that to the forefront. And that's why some of the training that's going around right now is great, because it allows people to recognize when these things might come up. Just be mindful. I mean, and for people of color, we're also mindful for other cultures. There's always things that can be seen as a microaggression. I know that Natacha talked about when her accent comes out. How many times have you heard someone with an accent maybe and undermine what they are going to say because you're thinking they don't understand? In fact, completely opposite. This is somebody who speaks multiple languages. We should be praising them because they're extremely smart. Those are things that's like we just don't think about them the same way. So on the microaggression side, realizing it's something that you can choose not to do to someone. If you feel like you have done it, feel free to ask the question in private, please, about what you could do to, maybe what you did to offend someone, or, what could you have said differently? If you are the minority, if you feel safe enough to just say that, a teachable moment is oftentimes how we say it. Like, I understand your intent, but this is a teachable moment to let you know that what you said could be seen as, a microaggression. I would oftentimes do that in private as well, unless it just called for a public conversation. But, now there's a lot of there's a lot of eyes on this topic for very good reason. But again, growing up here, working here in this environment, especially the more you get into leadership, it's inevitable. And I think we just all need to do our part to just again to recognize those and I don't know, just try. And when you know better, you do better. That's just what they say. So sorry, Jelana, that's a special topic for me because I talk about it so much, but yeah, thank you.
No, I'm glad something we all needed to hear. We had the time and thank you. No, that was very profound. So for the final prepared question is for our panel, then we'll open it up to the audience. What's the best piece of advice you'd give to someone looking to do what you are doing? Anything like the best lesson you've learned you would like to share? Literally the best advice if they want to go, especially a woman of color, going into your field. And I know you just gave a great answer. Cobi, do you mind starting with this one as well?
Yeah, so right now, I guess my field, I'm back in nonprofit leadership, which I'm really happy to be. It was always in my nature that no matter what I was doing, I felt like I had to be giving back. So even when I was at the bank, I was giving away the bank's money. I was giving away the bank's resources, their volunteers and their time, figuring out how to give back ultimately. So if anybody's interested in, nonprofit leadership, or I could switch that, and that's helping entrepreneurs. That's probably something that everybody on this call could do. If in fact you own a business for yourself, taking on someone as a mentee or really helping someone who's interested in start a business to not only help them through the process, you could also connect them with organizations like mine. There's quite a few of us in and around the area that can help people get their businesses established. So, and then just, if you're going back to the nonprofit leadership, I'd say you just, be willing to do every role, perform every duty, and work with anyone that comes in the doors. I've been in every different level of roles in nonprofits prior to going into banking. There's nothing, even to this day, that I will not do with my staff, with our customers, with our clients. And I feel like the role of a leader is just that. Just be willing to do the work, be willing to help, be willing to serve, and be willing to walk alongside not just your staff, but our clients, in this case, small businesses.
Thank you. Natacha, what advice do you give for a woman of color entering the construction field?
My advice to those women will be just humble yourself. Just remember who you are, because this field, it can change you, because there's no such a thing as a filter, so remember why you choose to be in the field, why you choose to do what you're doing. Don't ever lower your standard to make somebody else's happy. And I'm going to repeat that again, like don't ever lower your standards to make someone else's happy. And I'm saying that based on personal experience, because you will be asked, you will be told because you're new or because you're shy or whatever reason, just remember who you are. Don't lower your standards and be kind to people and stand up for yourself. And if something is not right, say something, like don't be afraid to say something, and you'll be surprised. A lot of people will back you up. A lot of women in this field will back you up. I met a lot of wonderful women, and I had a lot of opportunities to sit and talk with them, and we all going through the same thing. We all been through similar situations. So when somebody new comes in, my goal and some of these women's goal, is to be there to help them, to help them navigate the field. So, and look for people like us, and a chamber in your state of, like connection, like Jenn mentioned, also, if you can't find that help, whatever it is you need in that field, trying to networking outside, find other women, so because it takes a lot, it can drain you, you get overwhelmed, but as long as you remember you are kind and you stand up for what you believe it's right, and if you say something you know it's the right thing, just don't back down, just stand up for what you believe it's right. I hope that makes sense. It's like my mind is going 100 miles an hour because I feel like there's so many things I can say about that, but I'm trying to narrow it down. Just don't lower your standard and remember who you are and be kind and humble yourself. Yeah.
Thank you, Natacha.
That's my advice.
Thank you. It's so true. Actually, talking about that, what advice do you give regarding pay discrepancies or the pay gap for other women going into your industry?
Is that for me?
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, any concerns or advice to someone regarding the pay gap for men and women, especially construction?
So I always use this example, when I talk to people about pay differences between male and female. It's I much rather work for McDonald's getting minimum wage with somebody else making minimum wage. And I know we are in the same, base, versus working for a high-tech company or a big company making minimum wage with somebody because they're male and making more money. So me saying that, I'm trying to say, you know your worth, and only you can be your own cheerleaders. And the minute you stand up and you start cheering, other people will stand up and start cheering with you. But if you don't take that first step, ain't nobody gonna take it for you. At the end of the day, you know how much you're worth. And if somebody can get you to the door for an interview, that tells you they're interested. If they're even a phone call, that tells you there's something you wrote down in that resume, whatever paper you send them, that they see that they're interested. So when you get there, you get an offer. Don't be afraid if it doesn't meet your standard to say, thank you very much, I appreciate it. Don't be rude, don't close the door, but I'm worth so much more than that. I mean, not in that word, of course, nicer, but point is, you have to ask for it. You have to negotiate it yourself, because if you don't ask for it, sometimes you just don't get it. Nobody's gonna just go and give it to you. If I'm in that field with this male and I know I'm doing the same thing that he's doing, and we both have the knowledge, work, there's no difference in it, man, I'm gonna fight for what's mine. And if it comes down to me have to get that McDonald's job while I'm looking for what I want, I'll do that. Because you know what? I'm not gonna stay there making minimum wage, okay? Making somebody else's happy or whatever, or take home the big money that I'm working hard for them to do, and somebody else is doing the same thing, making more money than me. It's all boiled down to, man, you gotta stand up for yourself. You gotta, and if you've been in that company and it's been going, say something. I mean, speak up. People need to speak up. If you work for them for so long and that's going on, speak up. Because we tend to wait for somebody else to speak up. And again, I think I said that earlier. And 20 years later, nobody else says anything, and we're still there, So, and I know it's hard because people, when you say speak up, they see confrontation. But you'll be surprised. It doesn't have to be a confrontation. You can have a conversation and just let them know, this is wrong, And most places, unfortunately, I can't say all places because I've worked for a big company that I went to similar thing, but most company out there will have a department, you know, if you bring those type of complaint, you know, that will look into it, that will back you up, that will help you. Hopefully, I hope, you know, that will help you follow through with that. I can negotiate your pay for you, and the person that try to give you the job, sometimes they ain't trying to pay you at all. So you gotta speak up. You gotta ask for it. You know your word.
Thank you, Tasha. Thank you. Okay, Jenn, being the first and most of the time the only woman and woman of color in your field, what words of inspiration would you give a young woman of color coming up today in 2022?
I think I kind of covered it in that previous question, but really for me, it's about knowing your own value and your own worth and never settling and never being willing to compromise. I, you know, had many microaggressions experiences that, you know, would happen to me. And I would look around the room and go, no one else caught that? Oh, it's just me, right? And that's, and Cobi, you hit the nail right on the head when you said it's extremely isolating. And especially when it's, you know, called out. In fact, I had an experience where for about 18 months, I was the only female on a 10-person leadership team, and the rest were all white men. And we were talking very clearly about the lack of female and people of color representation at all leadership levels leading up to us being the most senior leaders. And the boss, you know, when this was not intended, he goes, well, I've met my 33%. I've got 2 and 1, right? And pointed to me. And I was like, oh, really? That's what we're saying now? And so you never know when these kinds of experiences are going to happen. And I looked around the room and not a single person was going to say anything. So it can be very daunting to be the only and the one repeatedly. And I mentioned tokenism before. I turn that into an opportunity. I'm there. You're going to see me and hear me. I have value to add, and I'm clear that I have value to add. And so if you're going to bring me in as a token, trust me, I'm going to stay. And I'm going to get myself exposure for other opportunities where I am not just a token, or I'm going to be a voice so that I am not the only one a year from now. I want to be a part of that interview panel. I want to XYZ, whatever those things are. So my advice is, and Natacha and Cobi and I have all said it, speak up. It's something that you learn. You have to speak up for yourself, but really turning, you know, opportunity into, you know, whatever is given to you, whatever reason it's given to you, turn that into an opportunity for yourself. Use that as an advantage for yourself.
Thank you. Well, thank you to all of our panelists for just a great presenting wonderful answers to our questions. Now we are opening it up to our attendees. We have about 15 minutes for question and answers. I will try to catch and raise hands so you can ask your question, and also you can put them in the chat.
And we have Nathan.
Oh, thank you. First, I just want to say this is probably one of the best, if not the best panel discussion that I have seen in a very long time. All 3 panelists are amazing, and I appreciate all the insights that you shared. I am the newly appointed state representative for House District 30 here in Hillsborough. And as a new legislator, I would love the opportunity to chat with each of you one-on-one to kind of learn more about your respective fields and to just ask several follow-up questions and all that, which I know we don't have time for today. So I was wondering if our panelists would be willing to share their email addresses in the chat, because I'd love to reach out to you.
Are all 3 of you okay with your email, me sharing your email addresses in the chat? It's fine. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, for the next question. Oh, here's a question. How were you able to weather the pandemic when so many Black-owned businesses closed their doors? Let's start with Natacha.
That's a tough one. Whew. When I first started my business, one thing I learned very fast is save your money, because construction, you know, it can, when it's hot, and hot by hot, I mean, like when the jobs are coming, they're coming, and when the jobs are slowing down, they're slowing down. So I was able to, when I first started, met a few clients and did a few jobs, and I didn't go buy the red pickup trucks. Instead, I put that in my saving. And when the pandemic came, I sort of kind of cut down all the wants, and then recalculating everything, remanaging everything, cut down. One of the things that I cut down was insurance, because my insurance covers everything that's included in the construction industry. But since the pandemic, not everyone was doing the interior, any type of interior work. So I take the insurance down to just, you know, what was needed. These are just a few things that I did. Yeah, I mean, yeah, reevaluate, recalculating, don't overspending, and networking. I took the time to network a lot, meet a lot of great people, get educated more, and just go slow. Don't overspend. That's what did it for me.
Thank you. As a business owner myself, that's great advice. And Jenn, same question. And since you mentioned networking earlier, also after you discuss maybe how, I would say, since you work for a larger corporation, how were there changes during the pandemic for hiring, and then also networking groups? Did you join networking groups to help navigate through the pandemic?
Yeah. I would say, well, for the pandemic, my job drastically changed because my job is connecting with the community. No one was doing that. So it's really hard sometimes to make a connection this way, right? And we are a lot of nonprofits that we had given grants to that were just desperate. They were for specific programming that they could no longer do. So the first 6 months was just scrambling and trying to reallocate funds for operating costs so that these organizations could keep their doors open to do testing, to do whatever it was in our community locally. So a big shift in how we worked and where we fund, you know, what we funded specifically. At the same time, half of our staff still had to go in every single day because they're making life-saving medicines. And in a clean room, they're already from head to toe, and now they've got to wear a mask, and you can't social distance when only 4, you know, it was very difficult for us to figure those things out. Yet our patients still need the medicine every day, right? We have a distribution center. We distribute to the world, 80 countries out of Hillsborough. So that stuff had to get on that truck and get to the Hillsborough airport and get out of here, you know, every day. So there was a lot of sort of incident command work that many of us had to do. And then the other really interesting thing was that one of our medicines that's currently on the market for rheumatoid arthritis, which is an inflammation, was being used in Italy and other places for COVID patients to reduce the swelling for those who had the bronchial COVID. So the FDA cleared, after like the first 6 months of the pandemic, the FDA cleared our medicine to be used for emergency use around the world, made in Hillsborough. So now we've got this sort of renewed like vigor, like we're really a part of solving it, right? We get to be a part of helping people, but also the rest of our patients who normally take that medicine still need it. So what do we do? Because now we've got to make 150,000 vials. That's a month's worth of work. You know, we have to grow the medicine, fill it, like all the things. And so there was a lot of chaos and a lot of having to come together, and, you know, and every business had this, but for us, the shift was really, how do we help support the people who have to go on site? Because a lot of people at first were like, oh, I don't like being at home, my dogs, my kids, whatever, but we were safe at home. and the people who went to work were not safe. So there was a lot of how does the business support our business continuity staff and our work at home staff and continue to engage people. So for us, the pandemic, had some different meanings because we had to just shift our focus to actually trying to be part of the solution, which is great. And lots of cheering happened when we shipped it out. From the networking side, I always tell people use LinkedIn more than Instagram. Just use LinkedIn. LinkedIn is an amazing place for networking. There's so much you can do there. You meet, in a panel like this, you should all, add us all on LinkedIn because we're all connected now, right? And so not just emailing, but like using LinkedIn to get into groups that you're interested in. Women of color in XYZ industry. And it might be locally or it might be across the country. So I really encourage people to use that tool. But also there's local organizations like Partners in Diversity and other local organizations that are focused on connecting people of color specifically.
Thank you, especially Partners in Diversity. Thank you. Yeah. Quickly, Natacha, do you have any networking groups you recommend?
I agree with Jenn, LinkedIn. Also, it's a great networking group. I've been using it. I have you guys. I'm not an Instagram person. I never understand the purpose behind it. I mean, I know some people loved it, but it's just not my stuff, my style. But yeah, LinkedIn and a chamber.
Thank you. Cobi, both questions. How was it helping businesses during a pandemic as the CEO of Miso? And then also what networking groups you recommend?
Yeah, so during the pandemic, I was still at the bank. So I can relate more to Jenn in that we were grant making and investing and trying to make things easier for our nonprofits so that they wouldn't have to shut their doors during the pandemic. But at Miso, I know one of the things they've done, and we still are doing this, is we've taken and really enhanced our offerings around brand marketing and e-commerce. So we took a number of our businesses online during the pandemic. Miso likes to boast that during 2020 and 2021 that we didn't have any businesses shut their doors. And in fact, we have some clients that are doing better now online than they ever were doing in the in-person environment with the farmers markets or the festivals and fairs. We have some amazing stories. We have somebody who's opening up a third brick and mortar, 2 of them since 2020 during the pandemic. It just really depended on how they offered services, what they offered, and the amount of work we could kind of put in on the back end to get restructure and just realign their business. The other thing that we did was we partnered with a number of municipalities, cities, and states, so counties, cities, and states here in Oregon, to administer a lot of the funds that they were given for the pandemic. So a lot of ARPA dollars around recovery and a rapid response for the pandemic. And we administrated grants. So they would host the link on their site, and then the business would go to that particular site, apply for the grant. And then Miso did all the administration on the back end to make sure those businesses got those rapid funds in multiple counties across the state of Oregon. And that's been something that has continued since ARPA has continued. We expected that would slow down, and it really has not. So most of those municipalities that have those economic development dollars are using us in partnership to make sure that we can get those out to the businesses. And then in turn, the businesses then know that we're there as a resource, either for lending, for additional grants, or for TA, whatever it is that they need. So that's actually become kind of an arm of our business that we didn't have before, and that's grant making for us. But it's fairly complicated, but we do have that relationship already, know how to work with it, and we've really built a back end that can support it. So, we have seen people who have come to us as brand new clients and get them into our system very quickly to figure out how to navigate during the pandemic. So it's been pretty impressive for the last year that I've been there. And prior to that, again, I was just in a different space, but really doing more to help the nonprofit before that. And then as far as memberships, I just sent Natasha a quick note because there's 2 organizations that are focused on minority contractors. Both of them I think would be of great help. That's NAMAC and PDBG. I would definitely reach out to both of them. But you know, there's so many groups. So like she mentioned, Partners in Diversity. For people who are more advanced in their careers, there's like there's Women on Boards, and there are national groups about Black women on boards that I think, you know, you could definitely get in on. And then just board service in general is another opportunity. When given the opportunity to serve on a board of directors for a nonprofit, I would absolutely take that. It's an amazing networking opportunity and a way to give back. And depending on what type of board it is, if it's a corporate board, you know, there's other benefits to that as well. But, you know, we at MESO, we're a part of most groups that are related to economic development in any particular county or city. And just being at the table is really helpful. So, I mean, if you have the opportunity to take part and to be of assistance, I would absolutely recommend doing that.
I would second that. I wrote that down earlier and forgot to mention it from a networking standpoint. Even if you're not later in career, get on an ambassador board. Yeah. Because you have exposure to an executive board. And if you are a person of color, specifically, if you're not on a board, I highly encourage you to, because you're in great demand in this area. And so often people will get 4 or 5 different, you know, once you go out there, you'll have 4 or 5 other organizations. So find something you're passionate in, or look at the makeup of a board of a nonprofit that exists. And if there's someone on there that you want to have an opportunity to connect or network with, reach out and just see if they're, because most boards are generally looking for people consistently.
Absolutely. And Jen, I want to add to that real quick because it goes back to the microaggression, something you mentioned about being like a 2-fer or a 3-fer. So, and I'm on way too many boards. I'm always on way too many boards. I'm always trying to navigate off, but it's the nature of our business because they don't have enough representation. So there's this feeling of responsibility that you have to show up and say yes, because if you don't, they won't have a person of color represented on the board. But you know, there was one particular one where they said they got a woman, they had a mom, they had a banker, and then something else. And they actually said that in the meeting, like we checked off, it was 4 boxes we checked off by getting you on the board. And that was my first board meeting. And there was not a second one. I sent an email promptly after that, just, you know, saying, you know, I was doing this to be a representation, but, you know, the way that you structured that and said that in the middle of the meeting, almost jokingly, I can do other things with my time. So the microaggression thing, I mean, sometimes people think it's funny or it's a joke, and it's absolutely not. Like there's too many other things that pull up my energy to be someplace that doesn't actually value me. They just like the boxes they can check. But not to bring it back down again, but that absolutely with board service here, if you are a person of color in a professional environment, you will be asked a lot. And, you know, make sure that if you're interested, that you just find ones you're passionate about, because if not, you can overload yourself very quickly.
Thank you. Will Eberhard, you had a question?
I did have a question. Thank you, Jelana. First and foremost, I'm super appreciative of the panelists and the shares. One thing, and as you speak about mentoring and talking about networking in the community, I'm very familiar with being one of the only, or if not the only one in the room. And I learned a long time ago that it's all about downfield blocking. And so I wondered if you had any insight or advice for those of us listening on how to create opportunities that allow people to advocate for you within those spaces when it's just you, whether it's you approaching them or someone approaching you on your own behalf.
I would love to go first if that's okay, because this is something that I've worked hard on trying to create space for. And when I'm mentoring people, tell them, you must find your allies. You must actively seek your allies. And you know who they are. They show up in meetings. They, you know, create safe space for you. Hey, Will, what do you think? Have you ever had anybody say that for you? That's your ally. So I'm very transparent and vulnerable with my allies and say, hey, you know, I'm not so much at this point in my career, but for a lot of my career, I have just said things like, hey, you know, I'm going to bring up what might be a controversy. I'm going to put the stinky fish on the table today in this meeting. Can you have my back? right? Or can you, if I'm going to bring up an idea and repeatedly somebody else will say that idea later on, and then it's heard and it's not heard when I say it. So will you then please acknowledge that you heard what I said? Or if someone repeats it, say, I think Jen said that earlier. Find your allies. That's when you say, downfield, that's what I do. Find my allies if I think I'm going to be going into the lion's den or any situation where I may be having to have a crucial or difficult conversation about something very specifically, or if it's an innovative meeting and we're doing a lot of brainstorming and trying to get ideas out. That's another way where I float some ideas in advance with people. So that's my biggest word of advice, is find your allies and then lean on them.
Absolutely. And I appreciate the football analogy as a diehard football mom, just so you know. The same thing, like if you know you're going into a difficult situation and you have a feeling about who your allies are, I would say you pre-prep some ringers in these conversations. And I have had to do that many times. Sometimes you'll leave a conference or leave a meeting or a discussion and somebody will email you after the fact. They'll come up after the conversation and say something to you. And those are the people you're saying, if you're comfortable, say something during the meeting. And oftentimes they'll come back. Or I've had people send me articles after discussions, like, I found this and I've seen this. And I'm like, well, will you bring that up at the table? And sometimes they just want to be asked and feel comfortable to know that, that they want to be an ally, just sometimes don't know how. But if there's a really hard conversation, I'll find those people that I know are allies and have them bring up certain topics, because unfortunately, sometimes people hear things better from people that look like them. And they might not finish the conversation, but them adding, kind of their validation really helps to pave the way for maybe me to continue it, or me to do this presentation or present this topic area. But sometimes what I can present a topic that I'll just be the likely suspect. Of course, I said something about that, or of course I mentioned it, but if someone else does, that it opens the door in a way that is just, it's different. So the allyship is 100%. So I absolutely agree with that. And I just say, if you know who they are, prep them to help you have conversations, or help them, tell them what they can do to help you in meetings.
I agree with both Jenn and Cobi. In my industry, it's everybody, it's like, it's so obvious. So everybody is trying to be that allies for you in that way. I don't know if that makes sense. So there are times where, if I need somebody to have my back or be my allies, I will have a conversation with them and involve or educate them about the topic that I want to bring up or the topic that I want to talk about. And surprisingly, as long as they understand, they see your point of view, they tend to, these people tend to, not these people, because it's a big industry, but your workspace your site work doesn't include that many people. Once you find out one person or two person is what I mean, and you educate them about what you want to do, what you want to talk about, they'll stand up for you. They'll have your back, because it's so obvious. There's not a lot of Black women in the construction industry. Whether I meet a woman or a male that want to know what's going on with it, what I go through on a daily basis, there will be that ally once they understand, what my point of view or what it is that I want them to have my back on. I hope that makes sense. I hope I didn't confuse it more for you guys.
Oh, that made perfect sense. Thank you. Any questions, additional questions? Make sure I didn't miss anybody.
I have a question. Hi, my name is Kim Moreland, and I'm the owner of Moreland Resource Consulting. And after a long career in planning and community development, I decided to open up my own business. And it's been really wonderful. And one of the things I don't miss is the microaggressions in the workplace. But I recently experienced some in a public setting as a member of a public committee. but I love Cobi's approach about pulling that person aside, and sometimes I wonder if it's worth doing it publicly because they approach you publicly, or the microaggression was made publicly. So, but that's not my question. But I just want to say how much I appreciate that conversation. I know oftentimes, women face the imposter syndrome, and when you're dealing with that, and microaggression make it even worse. How do you overcome that? I mean, I'm so inspired by your leadership and just your just strong sense of self, which I didn't have at your age, but I do, as a mother of 3 daughters, I really want to encourage them, to really feel secure in who you are and what you bring to the table and how to overcome that imposter syndrome. Do you have any advice?
I can say that I don't know that you're ever cured of it. Because even at this stage when I was a singer in a band for 17 years that did high-end events. And, I'd never had imposter syndrome on stage because I was singing somebody else's words, right? It's a cover band. I was there, we were a 7-piece band. We were there to entertain. Whenever I come to things like this, I did another panel earlier this month for another organization. And I was just feeling a little trepidatious, I want to share the right things. And there's this really high outpowered other women. And then they started reading the bios of all of us. And after they read my bio, I was like, oh, I want to know her. She's amazing. And then I was like, oh, they're talking about me. You belong here. So remind yourself that you belong where you are. You started your own consultancy. That takes courage and risk, right? So remind yourself that you are where you're supposed to be. And when it comes, talk it down, just hype yourself up. Sometimes someone will send me an email that says something that really hits me, like, thanks, Jen, wherever you are, you're making the world better or something like that. That goes right into a little Jen folder on the days that I am questioning whether or not I'm adding value or that I'm showing up in the way I want to show up or that anybody even sees me. And then I see those emails or those notes that people gave me and I remind myself, just keep doing the work. You're doing what you're supposed to do. So I don't know that it goes away. I think with each new big opportunity I get, I kind of second guess, why are they asking for my voice here? And then I'm reminded that I have something to add and I have something to learn. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say, I absolutely agree. If you have your daughters have an amazing peer group, like their friend group, your own set of cheerleaders is awesome. I mean, if you ever need someone to cheer for you, oftentimes it'll be those people that you come back to and you share with. I mentioned not always having it at work, but you can build that for yourself. It's incredible one thing I tell my daughter, like if you're the smartest person in your peer group, you're in the wrong peer group. You need to surround yourself with people that are equally as smart, that know more than you, that can teach you, that can correct you, all those things. But if there's something great in your life, that's who you take that to. And seeing other powerful women around you that are just hyping you up in that way, it really is a powerful experience. And similar to what Jen said, I remember on a panel one time, they said there was going to be an expert in XYZ. And I got excited because I'm getting ready to take my notes out to find out who the expert was, and come to find out, they were looking to me. I was the expert they're referring to. And it's like, until you hear those things, sometimes you just think you're doing your job and you know your job. But when you really start unpacking, you're like, actually, no, like I'm good at this. I've been doing this a long time. I do know what I'm talking about. Sometimes it's like that you have to pump yourself up from time to time. And it's real. Like, you get to a point where you're no longer you get to that point where you don't have to pretend on your resume. You're not hyping up and adding additional words to make yourself sound great. You're at the point where you're like, actually, I know this, like I can do this. I'm at that, I'm at that place. You don't want to get overconfident, but at some point, you know what you've gone to school for, you know what you've worked hard for, the people that look to you for this information, and you're confident that you can do it and walk into that space. It's invaluable. I would absolutely tell them to build up that peer group of other people who are just as progressive, who are still moving forward, again, that are smart people surrounding them that they can learn from is really incredible. And Kimberly, just so you know, I always look to you as one of those people. I mean, you did amazing work with a number of boards I was on when you were at the agency you were with before. And I used to love to see you come in a room because there was another Black female in the room when I'd be in the room that knew what the heck she was talking about. I loved it. So just so you know, congratulations with what you've done. I want to get you back in MESO to figure out what's going on with our new mural, but it's good to see you here. But you know, kudos to you. They have you as an example. Absolutely.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm gonna put that in my photo.
I agree with you, Cobi. I have a best friend of 20 years, and whenever I'm going to do an event, I always tell her a couple days in advance. She's like, "What time is it?" And then I know I'm getting a text message from her like 20 minutes. She's, "You got this," right? Or just whatever it is, just having those people that know you and know, you know, are able to just support you in that way. It's really powerful.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, this has been amazing. Is there any other questions before we wrap it up? Checking any hands. Okay, I think. So thank you. This has been such a great program. Thank you so much to our panel members for participating and giving us this opportunity to get to know you better. You're all very accomplished, and we appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. And quickly, I'm just going to say all three have influenced Jelana's Bake Shop. I've done business classes, and funding for our first storefront, which is coming soon, is through MESO loans and grant. Natacha has helped me find a team, construction companies and other general contractors that I could use, since she does residential and I'm looking for business. Thank you, Natacha. And Genentech was one of the first corporations to support me. And I feel like you having a presence and just being a guiding force for them to look beyond name brand bakeries and to take a chance on a business run by a woman of color, a Black woman. Thank you. So that's just a personal shout out. Thank you to all three of you. And I am an example of what women do and how they change our community. So if you'd like to learn more, please join and support the Black Advisory Business Council. Please visit our page on the chambers. I'm going to put it in the chat. Just give me a second. I'm not really great with talking and dropping things in the chat yet.
I got it for you, John.
Oh, thank you.
I'll drop it.
I have it highlighted and copied, ready to paste. I just wanted to give everybody my full attention, saying thank you. Both links should be in the chat any moment from Titonian. And we would also like you all to take time to fill out our brief 2-minute survey, which you'll also put in the chat. And thank you so much for doing that. It really makes a difference. So, and share with us your thoughts about this special panel discussion and any ideas what you would like to see presented to the community in the future, and any topics you'd like us to cover. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much for having us. It was great to connect with all of you. And I recently moved to Hillsborough, like right before the pandemic. And so I haven't been able to connect locally, even though I've worked there for a long time. So I'm excited to be able to be part of the chamber as from a personal level, as well as a business level. Thanks for having us here.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for a great presentation. Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
You're all welcome. Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for attending.